How do you do a Christmas donation drive? In this video, I'm going to walk you through 7 steps to set up your own donation drive. But this isn't just a regular video. I'm actually going to break down several things about creating a drive, several things you probably didn't think about. And this isn't just for individuals. This is for people who are either doing this independently or you have a nonprofit and you want to add a donation drive to the services that you provide. But there's something really important if this is just you as an individual wanting to help somebody. There's something I really need to tell you when it comes to the IRS. So just wait until after step 4. And once we get there, it'll make more sense, but I want to share some things you should be mindful of. If you don't know me, I'm Tiffany with Boss on a Budget. I actually help people start nonprofits and I teach them to raise money, but I'm just interested in helping people do good. So I wanted to do this video for anybody wanting to help somebody in the Christmas season. So here's the first thing I want you to do. I really want you to ask yourself why. What is the reason you want to do this donation drive? So some of you watching this are like, I already know I want to do this. Why would I have to go back and ask myself, what's the purpose? What's behind it? The reason why I want you to really figure that out for yourself is because it can help guide you when you need to make certain decisions about what direction you want to go. Sometimes people are just like, I just want to help somebody. And part of the reason why they're not as successful is because they're just doing any and everything. Somebody suggests one thing and they just go with the wind. Somebody suggests something else and they go there because they didn't have a good sense of direction from the beginning of why they wanted to do this and where they wanted to go with it. So ask yourself, what's the reason? And for a lot of people, it may be a personal reason, especially if you're doing this just as an individual. You may have had a personal experience and you want to give back. So maybe at some point in your life, you were homeless and you want to bless people who are living in a shelter. Maybe you had a rough childhood and you didn't have a good Christmas all the time when you were a kid and you want to help another child. Maybe you were in foster care and you want to help kids in foster care. There's probably a reason that's motivating you to do this. One other motivation could be you have an overabundance of stuff. Maybe you have kids and they have too many toys and you want to give back and give toys. Or maybe you just want to teach your kids or someone in your life the lessons around giving and charity. Whatever it is, and it could be a combination of those things, understanding what it is or what's guiding and motivating you is really going to help you narrow down on how you want to do this. Because it's not as simple as saying, hey, I want to help somebody this holiday season. I've heard of a lot of people who want to do that and then they're like, it didn't really go anywhere. I couldn't find the people or I just couldn't get everything together. So it really helps in the very beginning to figure out why you want to do this and what's the motivation. If you already have a nonprofit, it's perfectly okay to have a Christmas donation drive. What I will say is first ask yourself, how does it align with your mission? Because one of the roles of being on a board of a nonprofit is making sure that you stay in alignment with your mission. So if you're doing a set of activities and then all of a sudden, because other people are doing it, you want to do a donation drive, but it really doesn't mesh well with your mission at all, then you got to ask yourself, should we be spending our resources on something that does not align with our mission? Because we told the IRS, if you're a tax-exempt organization and you're 501c3, you told the IRS what your purpose was and you have to stay in alignment with that charitable purpose. So just ask yourself, if you're already established as a nonprofit, well, why are we doing this? Is this in alignment with the kind of services we provide? Is this going to distract from the type of work that we do already? Or is it going to add to or complement what we're doing? The next thing you want to think about is who. All right, so we started with the why, and now we're going to go to who. Who do you want to help? Who's the target of the donations that you want to provide? And for a lot of people, when they think about Christmas, they automatically think about children. But even when you're thinking about children, that is a wide category. It could be kids in your local area, or it could be kids in a different country. It could be young kids, or it could be teenagers. Like I said before, it could be children who are in foster care or who are formerly in foster care. The list goes on, right? That's why it's important for you to decide, who do we want to impact? And it's not just kids though, because I do want to point out that a lot of times, especially in the holiday season, there are people who just gravitate to what they know, meaning toys, meaning children. But there are also people during this holiday season who need support and who need help, who are often overlooked. So one thing you may want to do is think about how you can be different and unique than other organizations doing this work. So if you find that there's a lot of people or organizations already supporting a certain kind of population or a certain area, then think about how you can be unique and you can add to what's already out there. Have you thought about older adults? Have you thought about people who are disabled? Have you thought about the unexpected people or the unexpected populations who a lot of people don't support? And this may get a lot of flack, but sometimes you'll have women's shelters or shelters for families, but not for men. So maybe there's some kind of support that you want to do, especially if you're a man, to support other men who are in need this holiday season. There are so many people who need help, and I know it's a frustration having worked with a lot of nonprofit founders that for some missions or for some causes, people just gravitate. They gravitate to food, right? Homeless shelters. They gravitate to providing toys, but think outside of the box and think about who else you could be a blessing to during this time. So let me give a caveat related to all of this. So one thing you need to do if you're really interested in having a donation drive is first doing a scan and seeing who else out there is doing similar kind of work or who are already providing items for other people. So in the exercise of figuring out what are those overlooked populations, part of it is understanding what already exists out there. And that's something that you need to do because you don't want to duplicate efforts. Or if people already have the connections and can easily get the items that you're trying to get, it may make a lot of sense for you to do something different or even partner with them, even add to what they're doing. So part of you figuring out who you want to serve also includes you figuring out what already exists out there so you can be a complement, not a duplication of efforts that are already going out. This is the last thing I'll say about the who. This may surprise you, but oftentimes when people give, the priority often is them feeling better about themselves. I know it sounds funny, but it's true. So a lot of the motivation is selfish, but it could be a good selfish. I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with that. But the problem comes in is when people want to decide what they want to do for people who need help without actually understanding the people's experience, without actually understanding what they really need. And the problem becomes when you decide what you're going to do, even though somebody can tell you what they need. And it's better for you to listen first instead of you just deciding, I want to do this because I want to seem like I'm a great person. And this is real. This is why I started with what's your why? Are you doing this for yourself or are you doing it for somebody else? And if you're doing it for somebody else, then it really makes a lot of sense for you to first take a step back and ask yourself, what do they really need? And you don't know what they need unless you ask them or unless you do the work to figure that out. So all I will say is in this process of figuring out how you're going to do this work and figuring out who you're going to target, make sure you ask people what they really need. Okay, I'm off the soapbox for just a little bit. So if you are interested in doing a Christmas donation drive, this is the third thing you need to think about, the how. And there's going to be a lot included in this, so make sure you have a notebook, make sure you're taking notes because there's just a lot of things that I thought about as I was creating the notes for this video. One of the things you got to ask yourself is, what is the scale of this effort? Is it just going to be me? Am I just interested in helping a few people, or maybe I want to help a couple families? Is this something I want to do with my family and we do it as a small group or with a group of friends or acquaintances or maybe on the job? Is this something that I want to do in partnership with another organization? Maybe do a scan of what's already going on out there in your community and you find a really good effort or an organization doing amazing work and you just want to add on to what they do. Maybe they're collecting toys all across your city or all across your county and you just want to collect toys for them and just donate the toys to them. You really have to decide, how are you going to execute it? And so thinking about the scale of the effort is one of the first things you need to ask yourself. How big and who's a part of this effort alongside with you? If you're trying to make a decision whether you should do it yourself or do it like with a group of people or partnering with the organization, let me tell you the advantages of doing either or. So if you decide to do it as an individual or with a small group of people, you get to control like how you provide that donation. So if you want to make sure it goes to a certain kind of family, or if you want to make sure there's certain items that you want to donate or you want to provide goes to the people, then you have more control over that situation. When you're working with an organization, they already probably have protocols in place and know what they will or won't accept. On the flip side, if you are working with an organization, they usually have an established infrastructure. They may have done this before. They may have all the operating procedures, so they just know what to do. It's probably going to be a little better run than you, especially if you're doing this for the first time. They probably have access to a set of volunteers who can help with the whole effort. And they probably know all the things you wouldn't know unless you execute something. So you don't know if you need a license, or if you got to do certain things, or if you donate this, what are the implications if you donate food, or etc. They've been through it, and so they bring that experience with them, and it can make for a smoother process. I don't have an opinion about either or. If you want to decide to do things on your own, I actually don't have a problem with that. I know a lot of people do, because they feel like, well, there are nonprofits out there who need this stuff, so why not just donate to the nonprofits who are already doing that? And I do think that's a fair argument to make, so I do think you should be doing your due diligence. And if there's an organization that needs help and needs donations, then give to that organization. But I also don't think there's anything wrong with a person saying, I want to help somebody, and them taking the steps to get it done. I would just say, if this is your first time doing it, keep it small. You don't have to do a huge effort right out the gate, because then you have to ask yourself, are you doing it for a show, or are you doing it to be effective? And if you want it to be effective, then you got to test the waters. You got to see and make sure that this works, because why put up all the effort if it's not going to be executed as well as it could be? That's just my opinion. The other thing you want to think about is, do you need people? So I talked about how you can do this with a group of people, but even if you decide to do this as an individual, if you figure out that you want to distribute on a certain day, you need help. It's going to be hard for you to do some of this, especially if it's a larger scale, to do this all on your own. So you have to think about whether you need volunteers, what that will look like, what's their time like, and what are the implications of that. Also, you want to think about what's your liability in all of this. So if you're having something where people are coming to you, if you're hosting something, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about that in the next section, then you might need to have some kind of insurance, especially if you're renting out a space. They may require that you have insurance for the day, just in case anything happens. You also want to think about if you're engaging with children. So if you're passing out toys to children, there it may be a possibility that children may be on site. And if you're using volunteers, then you need to know who you're working with, and you need to make sure that those people can be around children. And so you need to make sure you do your due diligence in understanding all of that background before you organize this event. So to sum up with this section, think about like how big it needs to be. Think about who you're engaging in this. Is it just you? Is it other people? Is it other organizations? And think about any liability concerns or implications that come with how you want to execute this drive. So the next thing you want to think about is the structure of the drive, or how you're going to design the drive. So here's some questions you want to ask yourself. First, you got to figure out, what are you donating? What is it? Is it materials? Is it items? Is it clothes? Is it food? Is it shoes? Is it gift cards? Is it cash? And depending on what you're doing, you have to figure out how you're going to collect that, and also how you're going to distribute it. We talked about before on how big it's going to be. So what does that mean? How many people are you serving? How many families? For each individual or each family, what are they getting? If you are collecting food, are you giving them a basket? Is it a meat and sides? Is it like a meal, or is it food for the month? Is it household items? Is it clothes for children in the household? Is it coats? Is it socks? I could go on and on. But one thing that's definitely going to trip you up is if you just say, well, we're collecting anything. You want to be focused and you want to be prepared, because here's the thing. If you just tell people you're collecting anything, then say you have 10 families you want to help. Well, you may not get everything you need for all 10 families if you're not specific about what you need when you go out and ask people to donate. So think about, like, again, how you're going to structure this. How many people? What does each person get? And what kind of items are they going to receive? If you are collecting items, you got to think about storage. So you may be running a drive for several weeks. Well, if people are bringing items to you, then where are you going to keep those items? Are they bringing them to your house? Are they bringing them to your building? Are you partnering with other people and you have them collect and store the items, and then on one day you just come in and get everything? How are you organizing and coordinating the effort? You also want to think about how you are accounting for everything that you collected. And there are several reasons why you want to do this. First of all is to just stay organized, so you know how to divide everything up when you need to distribute distribute them. But also, if you are a nonprofit, you want to make sure that people get credit for what they donated. So you can provide a receipt for the things that they donate. You should not be putting a value on what they donate. You just put on that donation receipt what they gave you, and then they do with it what they need to. They need to consult their tax professional about the amount, but you can just record what you received and just give the receipt to them. Let's go back to the items just for a second. So say you're collecting toys. Are you collecting new toys? Are you collecting gently used toys? The same with clothing. Is it new clothes with tags on it, or is it gently used clothes? If you're collecting food, what kind of food? Are you being specific towards certain kinds of diets? Do you need non-perishable items? So items that won't spoil because you may be storing it for a while and you can't keep it refrigerated because you don't have storage. Or maybe that's the point of your donation drive. You want to do perishable items. You want to do fresh food. So you got to think about how you're going to store that and how you're going to keep that so that it stays fresh until it's time to distribute. The other thing is this going to be first come, first serve? Have you targeted the individuals that you're planning to distribute the items to? Is there a list that you're keeping? Are they coming to a space or to a spot to collect the items, or are you delivering the items? And again, that's why I talked about before, like liability concerns. Well, what happens when you are driving or you have volunteers and you're all driving in a car? Now you may be saying, now Tiffany, you just taking it a little bit too deep. I'm helping somebody. Why do I need to think about liability and insurance? I just like to tell people what to be mindful of so they're not surprised. And that's a very real thing, especially as a nonprofit. You are providing a service. That's you doing part of your business services, and that may need to be covered by insurance. So you need to be mindful of that. Also, are you collecting money? Are you collecting gift cards? If you are, how are you storing that? How are you accounting for that? Whose hands are those gift cards passing through? Do you have several people tracking the process to make sure that there are no holes where people are getting a little slippery and taking some for themselves? And I'm only saying this because this is real. This really happens. That sometimes people intend to do some good, but they end up in a situation where they may take advantage, especially if you're not tracking super closely. So keep in mind of things like that. Okay, before we go to the next step, I have to do a quick intermission because I want to talk to those people who are not nonprofits yet and you're collecting cash. I did a video about this. I told a story of a man a couple years ago who was collecting items for neighbors, and he was getting money to buy food and buy meals for people for Thanksgiving, and he was hit with a tax bill for thousands of dollars. And you may think, oh, that could never be me, but it absolutely could be you. So if you're collecting money and you're not officially an organization, then the IRS may get wind of that money and they may consider that income for you, and they may tax that income. And so they're going to hit you with a bill and say, hey, you didn't put this on your taxes, you owe us money. That's a real concern. And that's also a concern if you're collecting money in Cash App, if you're collecting it in Venmo and PayPal and all the things, because they're required to report that income to the IRS. They're required to say what money transferred to people's accounts. So if you think that the IRS will never get wind of it, you may be surprised. Even if you're depositing it in your personal bank account, you may be surprised by what the IRS knows, and you may be surprised with the tax bill. So be very careful if you are collecting money, and be mindful of the tax implications of doing that. And if you are a nonprofit, it's less of a concern for you, but if you are collecting money from individuals, you need to make sure that you are registered in the state where your donors are. So 40 states require organizations to register as a charitable organization, meaning to ask for money, to ask for donations. They require you to be registered. So you need to know about that process. If you are confused by that, and this is the first time you've heard that, check out the video I'm linking above. So you're doing a donation drive. Here's the fifth thing you need to know about. What's the timing of all of this? Are you going to give people weeks in advance to be able to donate, to hear about it, to do some marketing so you can collect items? Are you collecting those items in the meantime? Are they only coming on one day? When in the month are you doing this? Because people kind of get into the holiday spirit or the Christmas spirit around Thanksgiving, and then it really goes into high gear. But you got to think about it. There's so many other things competing for your time and your energy. So if you're doing this too close to Christmas, then you may not get as much participation as you wanted, because once it gets close to Christmas and kind of the end of the month, people start worrying about celebrations and things like that. Not to say that everybody celebrates Christmas who wants to donate, but the end of December is a slow time regardless. A lot of people are not at work. A lot of people are just spending time with their family or taking off. So you just have to be mindful of that. A lot of times people do things kind of early in December to avoid the holiday rush. Here's another thing you want to think about. If this is going to culminate in one day, are you doing it as an event? Sometimes people do this. They'll advertise a donation drive, and then they'll say, hey, we're going to have a holiday party where you can come pick up your donated items. I saw something like this in Ohio that was great. It wasn't around the holiday, but it was like an annual fair where parents who were involved in the child welfare system could pick up donated items, but they also made it a fair. So they had people with tables all around this big auditorium. It was just a fun time for kids. They had all these activities and games and food, and they could also come pick up the items that were donated for their families. Though this takes a lot to execute, one advantage of doing this as a nonprofit is that you can get a lot of this sponsored. So if a local business wants to use their marketing dollars to advertise during your event or have an activation. So an activation is like they do something to be seen basically in your event. Maybe they sponsor like a hot chocolate corner, or they have a table, or they speak on the mic, right? And they pay for access to that. That's a sponsorship. You can get sponsorships for the food, so you don't have to pay for the food to feed the people while they're there or to feed your volunteers. You can also have people pay to vend there. So maybe they want to vend and sell things there, then you can have them pay for a table, and you can decide what that will be. There are a lot of possibilities if you do this as an event, and honestly, as an individual, you can do this too to cover your costs. But again, like I said in the intermission, rewind if you did not hear it, if you are collecting money as an individual, that really may have tax implications for you, so just be careful. Okay, number 6. What is your marketing going to look like? This depends on the scale of the effort, right? If it's a small effort, you may not have to do a lot of marketing. You may just ask your family and friends, or maybe in your church community or religious community you're a part of, or a social club, you just may ask them. You don't need to do any heavy marketing, but you may want to have just a regular flyer so people understand the details of what you're trying to do, because you're going to have specifics, right? We talked about this. You're going to have specifics about what you're asking for. You're going to have specifics about who you're trying to help and who's going to benefit. And people like to know that kind of stuff. So you can put that on a flyer. You can put the date you're collecting everything so people know when to have the stuff by, so they can make it more organized for your effort for your drive. So you want to have a flyer, but you can also create social media images to talk about the work, to prepare people. Especially if you're a nonprofit, you should have a social media page anyway as a nonprofit, and you can broadcast that you're doing this drive. If you need help creating a flyer or a social media image, go ahead and use Canva. It's free, and if you are a 501c3 nonprofit, you can get their professional account for free, so you can get access to even more tools than the free account. But the free account is pretty cool too. You get a lot of access to things. So use Canva. Whip up something real quick, put the details on it, and make sure you have a process and a schedule for dropping social media content for people who may want to donate. If you want to get the word out, you can also talk to other organizations in your community associations, clubs, the library, churches, if you want to get the word out about the donation drive. Maybe businesses want to put the word out there for you. You want to put the flyers out there to let people know there's a donation drive going on. So think about, what is your marketing strategy? And again, it depends on how big you want this to be, but use all the free tools available to you. You may also be able to get media. So your local TV news or your local radio station may be interested. They probably are interested in what you're doing, so you can reach the news desk and talk about what you're doing. You can create a press release and send it to the news desk. Having a relationship with the reporter or talking to them directly is usually more effective, but you want to talk about like how you're helping, who you're helping, and have some kind of tie to the local community. They love good news, especially around this time of the year. One thing I want to point out, especially for nonprofits or people who want to do this over and over again, don't just get a list of people and send out a flyer. I know that's easy to do because you don't have a lot of time, but if you really want to make this sustainable, talk to the people who you're going to send a flyer to. try to get a short call or Zoom call with them, or even drop in, like if it's a manager at a store or something, and just talk to them about what they got going on and what you got going on. Make relationships, make friends, just talk to people. It doesn't take a lot. Get them to know your face. Come in and say hello. Bring them a cup of coffee. If you work with a business, especially a business that's donating, bring some donuts or bring coffee for folks just to say thank you. Think about ways you can build deeper relationships with people, because you know you may want to do this over and over again and you want to keep those ties. And remember, when you're doing your marketing, think about how you're going to reach the people who you want to donate items, but also think about how you're going to reach people who may need the items. Because if you're not sure who's going to get the items, then you may need to do a little bit of marketing to identify the people so you have somebody to give the stuff to. The last thing that a lot of people don't think about is what to do after. And I always tell people, think about thanking before you even start. But you want to make thanking a big part of your process, especially if you want to do this over and over again. You want to think about how you're going to thank people, and that could be the people who worked with you, who volunteered with you, and the people who donated items. You also want to share information with them. People are doing this because they want to feel good. So they want to hear the stories of things that happened. What happened during the drive? What are the stories that you saw? Did it really help or bless somebody? Did they share something with you that you should share with your volunteers or your donors? Think about that. Save that information. Take notes. Send voice notes to yourself to remember the things that came up for you during these experiences that you want to share with other people, because people are doing this because they want to see that. They want to hear those stories and want to hear about those experiences. So don't keep that from them. Also, you might want to follow up with the people who actually got the items. You want to see how it worked. Was it helpful? Was it useful? Especially if this is your first time, you should always be in kind of like an evaluation mode to figure out what worked and what didn't. And one of the best ways to find out what did and didn't work is to talk to the people. So just say, hey, I want to check in with you. Is everything okay? Again, you're developing relationships, because this isn't just transactional. Hey, I just do this and I go on about my business. It's about making connections. You want to build connections with people. So think about how you can keep the conversation and a relationship going. Are you doing a donation drive? You have to tell me about it. Drop the information and the details in the comments below. I also have a lot of wonderful followers who do this all the time. So if you want to share your wisdom about your lessons learned, go ahead and drop it in the comments, because people need to hear from you as well. Thank you so much for watching this video. So I shared in this video 7 tips you need to know about creating a Christmas donation drive. I wish you the best. Thank you. Thank you for even thinking about helping someone else and doing good for a fellow neighbor. If you need help starting a nonprofit, if you're interested in starting a nonprofit, then make sure you visit me at bossonabudget.com, because I have resources there for you. And also make sure you follow this channel, because I drop videos every week on how to start a nonprofit and how to navigate the startup process. Thank you so much for watching this video. I'll see you in the next one.